Welcome, Senator Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I apologize for being late this morning. Much like the women who will be talking about today's bill, as a single parent, I myself had issues this morning. You hear the frog in my throat, and the young man at home has a frog in his throat, so it's hard sometimes. Anyway, so thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you a bill that is very, very important to me and the people who've come here to provide expert testimony today, and that's SB 23, a measure that seeks to remove the discriminatory and ineffective family cap in place for families receiving CalWORKs benefits. California's poverty rate is at its highest point since the mid-90s, with nearly 1 out of 4 California children currently living in either poverty or deep poverty. Specifically, members, this bill will do 2 things. It will stop punishing poor children for being born after their families began their CalWORKs caseload. Secondly, it will prohibit the state from inserting itself into the private reproductive and medical decisions of families who are poor and seeking basic assistance for their children. I'd like to note that the MFG policy was passed over 20 years ago, at a time when the CalWORKs program was a very different program. So this policy came into being before there was a lifetime limit on aid, before the 30 hours of work was required, and when the maximum benefit was closer to 80% of the poverty line, as opposed to our current meager provision of assistance, which is closer to 40% of federal poverty. Also now, colleagues, in California, welfare to work is now 24 months is the maximum amount of time you can receive the benefit. So the benefits we're talking about are already substantially diminished from their 1992 level, and a program that is much more prescriptive and is much narrower in focus. Under the MFG, a family forced to spread its meager resources slips further into poverty, as low as 26% of the federal poverty level. And colleagues, this is a policy, this is a public assistance program that in statute states its very design is to keep children out of poverty. And so quite frankly, we're not doing a very good job at that today. For 15 years, we have denied a mere $122 per month of basic needs assistance to our most vulnerable citizens, extremely poor infants, and we have no evidence that family caps have affected birth rates. Quite frankly, the birth rate across the state of California is low. The birth rates for women on CalWORKs are no different than the birth rate of women at any end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Yet over the same time, we've seen ample evidence of California families slipping deeper into poverty. The maximum family grant rule actually undermines the CalWORKs program, threatens families' economic security, and is a failed policy in every sense. Simply put, the MFG rule increases childhood poverty and is an overreach because it requires women on CalWORKs, unlike any other group of women in the state of California, to publicly disclose the method of birth control they use if indeed they want to challenge this program. Colleagues, I draw your attention to page 4 on the bill, lines 23 through 26. You'll see it's the language that we're trying to remove that actually states that the maximum family grant rule will not apply in any of these circumstances, and it lists the forms of contraceptive that a woman would have to use and have it fail and therefore have a baby for the maximum family rule not to apply. I don't know where any other assertion exists in California code. I have with me today Frank Mecca with the County Welfare Directors Association, Dennis Garcia from the California Latinas for Reproductive Justice, Jess Bartholow from the Western Center on Law and Poverty, and others who are here to discuss the impacts this policy has had on the state of California.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. If I can just remind the testimony to stick to the fiscal aspects of the measure. This was already heard in Policy Committee. Witnesses in support, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and members. Dennis Garcia with the Hernandez Strategy Group on behalf of the California Latinas for Reproductive Justice. CLRJ is a co-sponsor of this bill. CLRJ is proud to co-sponsor this bill. Current MFG is outdated. It quite simply keeps children in deep poverty who suffer the most under the current MFG rule. California simply cannot afford policies that drive infants into deeper poverty. Repealing the MFG policy will restore reproductive autonomy to CalWORKs families while preventing the harmful and health and human development consequences as a result of denying the basic needs grants to infants. A variety of studies show that children from poor families are much more likely to experience mental and physical health challenges as compared to their affluent counterparts. Furthermore, infants born into poverty, specifically those born into CAT families, face an increased risk of suffering homelessness and other hardships. We simply cannot sit by any longer to allow the persistent growth in deep childhood poverty. By relentlessly clinging to the current MFG rule, the state of California is not just increasing poverty, we are also creating greater challenges for our educational and healthcare systems. Each year, the legislature grapples with spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to respond to social byproducts of poverty. But we do very little to directly raise children out of poverty in the first place. With SB 23, we'll have the opportunity to give children born into poverty a fighting chance. Although its short-term costs may be considerable, however, the long-term benefits will help vulnerable families work themselves out of deep poverty by providing children with the minimum support they need to strive. As reproductive justice advocates, CLRJ supports women's decisions around their reproductive lives, especially in relationship to the provisions of resources to raise a healthy family. CLRJ asks for your aye vote.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Mecca, Executive Director of the County Welfare Directors Association. Our members administer the CalWORKs program on your behalf. You give us two major purposes for running that program: reduce childhood poverty and move people from welfare to work. The maximum family grant rule that we've implemented for 20 years undermines both of those goals and weakens your investment in the CalWORKs program. You've already heard from my colleague about the staggering social and economic costs of deep childhood poverty. Educational attainment is lower, healthcare costs are higher, their economic productivity as adults are lower, they're more likely to be utilizers of more expensive public systems as adults. The research is crystal clear that we pay a staggering cost, economic and social, for childhood poverty. But my members also want you to know that as we sit across a desk from families experiencing very deep poverty, most of them want to work. But when you're so poor that you're not clear where you're going to sleep tonight and you're so focused on the day-to-day struggles of making ends meet, teetering in and out of homelessness, it's simply unrealistic to think that families experiencing that kind of toxic stress can really focus on employment. That's what my members want for families in the CalWORKs program. So not only are we paying the social costs of poverty, we're also undermining the effectiveness of our program's ability to move people from welfare to work. That's why my organization is proud to co-sponsor this measure.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Jessica Bartholo with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. We're a co-sponsor. With a quick reminder that this bill is on the agenda of Stronger California, the women's agenda for the legislature. It's also on the top agenda items for the Catholic bishops this year, Young Catholics, the reproductive justice doctors, as well as all of our sponsoring organizations, and over 100 organizations in support. And finally, as a reminder, this bill was passed out of the policy committee with bipartisan votes and no votes. We urge your aye vote and support as this bill moves through suspension. Thank you.
Thank you. The next witness is for identification purposes only.
Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California Chapter, in strong support.
Thank you.
On behalf of Children's Defense California in strong support.
Gina De Silva with the California Immigrant Policy Center in strong support.
Joanna Parnes with Bay Area Legal Aid in strong support.
Sydney Reyes with the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence in strong support.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Martha Guerrero representing the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors in support of SB 23. The cost is a minor investment to address the significant amount of homelessness Los Angeles County is currently experiencing. Since June of 2007, we've seen a 188% increase of homelessness among our CalWorks families. Therefore, it is imperative that we have this bill to help stabilize these families, to help them have a roof over their heads, so that in the end, they can become self-sufficient, find jobs, and do much better for the families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole Ortelman on behalf of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors and Ventura County Board of Supervisors, also in support.
Thank you.
Good morning, Jill Adams with the Center on Reproductive Rights at Justice at UC Berkeley School of Law. Children conceived as a result of a reported rape or incest or a proven failure of permanent or long-acting contraceptive methods are exempted from the MFG rule. While laudable in practice, these exemptions are lamentable, or while laudable in principle, they're lamentable in practice because they put mothers in the position of bargaining their rights to privacy and to reproductive freedom in exchange for the support they desperately need to feed, clothe, and shelter their children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elaine Moy, Center on Reproductive Rights and Justice at Berkeley Law. I support this bill.
Thank you. Additional witnesses and support.
Yvonne Lindgren for the Center on Reproductive Rights and Justice at UC Berkeley Law in strong support.
Thank you.
Good morning. I am Carol Moon Goldberg with the League of Women Voters of California. We strongly urge support of this investment in Californian children and the future of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition to the measure. Seeing none. Finance, do you have a file?
The Department of Finance does not have a position on this bill at this time, but note that increased grant costs resulting from the bill are estimated to be $222 million annually general fund. Because the budget fully allocates the TANF federal block grant funds, all costs resulting from this bill will be borne by the general fund.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee members? Seeing none, this is a candidate for suspense. Senator Mitchell, thank you for being here. Would you like to close?
In closing, sir, thank you very much. And I appreciate your reminder that this is fiscal committee, because I do get a bit carried away on the policy of this bill that I personally and professionally find so offensive. And so to the fiscal arguments, yes, it does have a $200 million price tag, but I think it's important that we take that in context and recognize what we, during the Great Recession here in the state of California, did to the CalWorks program. A CalWorks program whose average cash grant, as I said, is already at the level of less than half of the federal poverty level. We reduced the grant by 8% in the last 5 years or so. We eliminated the COLA from the grant, and so we have systematically undermined the cash value, quite frankly, of this grant and its ability to help families not lift themselves out of poverty, but at least to sustain themselves for the brief amount of time that they're on CalWorks and can survive. And in closing, again, with regard to the fiscal impact, as reflected in the committee analysis, according to the Urban Institute, the study titled The Effect of Specific Welfare Policies on Poverty, the family cap policy increases deep poverty rate of mothers by 12.5% and increases the deep poverty rate of children by 13%. While the near-term costs of eliminating the rule are significant, more broadly, the long-term effects of its repeal are unknown, but could significantly reduce the cost of the projected lifetime physical, mental, and social impacts related to children raised in poverty, and the long-term economic, and social effects linked to this policy. We can't begin to calculate the savings this state would experience for generations to come if we do better by children earlier and provide them with the resources they need to be contributing California residents. With that, I ask for its favorable consideration when you take up suspense. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Without objection, we will move this item to suspense.
Thank you, sir.
Members, we are now going to move to two items in which the authors have waived suspense. Give an opportunity if there's support or opposition on the item. We will begin with SB 144 by Senator Pan. Is there any witnesses in support of the measure? Witnesses in opposition? Finance, do you have a file on this item?
We don't have a position on this bill, but note that the Department of Water Resources has already expended in excess of its projected state share of cost of the project. And so we don't see any additional out-of-pocket expenses for the project.
Thank you. Without objection, we'll move that item to suspense. Next, we have SB 234 by Senator Wolk. Is there Any witnesses in support of the measure? Come on down. You're the next contestant. Witnesses in support of this measure?
Members of the committee, Kathy Mannion, our CRC representing rural counties, the sponsor of the measure. We're in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional witnesses in support of this measure? Witnesses in opposition? Finance, do you have a file on this
No
item?
file.
No file. Without objection, we'll move that item to suspense. Okay. Members, before we wrap up, just want to give members that weren't here an opportunity to vote on adopting the committee rules. If the secretary can call the absent members.
Leyva? Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. Nielsen? Nielsen, aye.
With that, the committee rules for the 2015-2016 session have been adopted. Thank you. Looks, we are done for our first appropriations meeting. You know, this concludes our appropriations meeting. Thank you.